Hey, good morning. I'd like to thank every one of you for finding a way into this room. We're going to talk about ethics of sex work. And even if I have a couple of different hats chairing the Sexual Rights Committee in WAS, this presentation is not about the World Association for Sexual Health, and it wouldn't be the official position of WAS, at least not yet. I've been working with sex work quite a lot in SEXPO Foundation in Finland, and one of the key reasons for that is that we have been in tight cooperation with a support center for sex workers, which is one of our cooperation partners in Finland. And now also our chair of our organization is a sex worker, and she is very vocal and active in politics, so we have many different connections to the field. And my job as a philosopher and as a director of our organization has been to build a basis for our political position towards sex work. And as a philosopher, I tend to look into the matter from the point of view of structures and ethical questions. So these are mainly my points of interest or my approach to this matter. To start with some basics, I'd like to claim that sex is a medium of exchange. If we look into cultural exchange and exchanging different goods and services in human culture, we could say that trading of anything valuable is a cornerstone of human culture everywhere. We can also see its evolutionary roots because animals do exchange, and animals use sex as a tool of, as a medium of exchange as well. So it's not only human culture; it is sort of an evolutionary matter as well. So we cannot get rid of the phenomena anyhow. And anything that is valuable can be exchanged or trade. We can exchange information, well, like we do in the Congress now. We can trade goods, money. We can use status and favors, and also pleasure. For example, a very common example of trading things is that you give back rub to somebody and they give it to you as well. So this is an exchange of pleasure, of valuable thing. Just a couple of examples of animals who also engage in exchange, having sex as medium. Maybe the most known example is the bonobo chimpanzees, who have an extensive system of using sex as a social medium. They use it for pleasure, they use it for exchange, and notably, typically in their communities, males have resources and females use sex to get some of this. The same happens with a couple of different species of penguins, and also with the capuchin monkeys, who have they have an interesting story from a zoo, where researchers thought the capuchin monkeys to use money to buy grapes. And quite quickly, they picked up a way of earning money by sex, especially the females, and they then bought grapes with the money they earned by sex. So that wasn't taught to them. They just picked it up. That okay, I can get money from this with this resource as well, and buy grapes, which were very valuable for them because they liked them very much. So it has a prehistoric roots. And of course, exchanging things and anything is a very basic thing in interaction. And we see the exchange in many different cultural traditions. For example, the thing called temple prostitution, for example, where exchange of sex is a holy ritual as well. And then, for example, if you look in the history of Western art, almost all pictures of nude models, you pick any time, but not to modern times, the models would be sex workers, because no respectable woman would have taken their clothes off for the artist at those times. So when you go to the art museum in Paris, in Vienna, in Madrid, for example, you are going to go there and look at the sex workers posing for you. You might think that this is a very, very respectable pastime. You go to the museums and everything. And I think you should realize that this is just a kind of a topping of ideas of what is respectable in this case. And we should be very critical of our own ideas that what is sex work, what does it mean to be a sex worker, because this phenomenon is around us all the time, but we usually refuse to see it. Okay, so let's go to the ethical basic argument I'm going to present. Basically, it should be said that it's morally acceptable to trade one's personal assets. Whether you are a basketball player or IT specialist or well, a sexologist or something like that, you have learned to do something, you have some skills or you have some other personal assets, and it's okay to trade them, to use them as a medium of exchange. And you have something valuable you want to give to someone, and you get something valuable in return. Typically, nowadays it's money, because it's the ultimate medium of exchange in our societies. But it can be something else as well. And we can also claim that sexual capital is a personal asset. I think that you might be familiar with the theory of sexual capital or the idea of sexual capital. And now I just lost the woman's name who coined the term. Can you help me? Please, it's US sexologist. Well, it will come up later. But sexual capital basically means our capabilities concerning sexual matters. It can be our attractiveness, our ability to, our skills in sexual things, our social standing and our reputation, things like that. And we can develop it as well. Sometimes it is just as simple that, having a body is a part of sexual capital, especially in heterosexual sex work circles. A woman having a body is a sexual asset, which is, in a way, quite funny. It tells something about a male sexuality, that it's enough, basically, in many cases. And if you look at this kind of a position to sex work and sexual capital, you can easily see that it's supported by human rights and sexual rights. If you look at sexual autonomy, the statement you could make by these documents is that everyone should have the right to lead their lives as they see fit and to utilize their own sexual capital in the ways they see fit, if they are not hurting anyone in the process. And also the question of control of own body, which is a very feminist issue as well. If you look at abortion, if you look at sexual harassment, it comes other ways as well. The same principles grant the right to make what you want with your body. You can use it as a sexual asset. You can use it as a way of earning money, for example. And many people do in other fields as well. It's not only sex work, but if you think of giving a massage, being a masseur as a work, or what else you can do with your own body. So in this sense, it's a bit controversial that feminism itself is divided in two camps. That some feminists, even if they support these principles, they still say that we should abolish sex work or prostitution entirely. And from the point of view of the same principles, you can also support sex work and the freedom to do so. And then we have freedom of sexual expression, which also comes to the same point, that you should be able to do whatever you like with your own sexuality and express it freely. And from the Declaration of Human Rights, people have the right to livelihood. They should be able to pick up whatever vocation or whatever job they want to, if they have the qualifications. So basically, this sort of position, this basic argument that it's permissible to engage in sex work is pretty simple, it's pretty supported. But of course, it gets more complicated when we look into human interaction in its all complexity. And I'm going to discuss a couple of points from that area. The typical ethical discussion in this field focuses on the different kind of moralist arguments that try to explain why it is not allowed to sell or buy sexual services. I'm deliberately looking at it from a different point of view. I'm trying to find a more general viewpoint, like what is human interaction and how the ethics of interaction should work in this case as well. Because if you have a sound theory about ethics of interaction, it of course applies to exchange of different valuable things, like sexual services. And the basic thing is that all cooperation between humans should be based on fair agreement, that we agree that we are going to do this. We are going to play football together. Everybody agrees that we have these sort of rules and we are going to kick this ball to the goal. And these kind of things. And whatever we do, it has the same structure. Otherwise, if there is some other ways of interacting, like forcing someone to do something, it shouldn't be called cooperation or interaction, it would be oppression or something like that. And the same mechanism is visible in sexual ethics as a principle of consent. You could say that every sexual interaction should be based on voluntary informed consent of all parties involved. And it's the same principle of fair agreement. It has some conditions. And these conditions bring a couple of prohibitions. There is a prohibition of coercion. No interaction should be based on pushing another person, threatening them, or abusing power to make them do what they probably don't want to do in the first place. And the other prohibition is prohibition of exploitation, which means that the terms of the agreement must be fair and balanced. And it's a hairy thing, actually, to say when they are fair and balanced, because some people say that because of patriarchy, men and women are not equal, so selling and buying sexual services can never be balanced. But then again, if we would say like this, we should conclude that in any other areas of life, we don't have the same balance. So any agreement between men and women should be rendered impossible because of power imbalance. So this argument kind of goes a bit too far easily. So I need to look into power imbalance. What does it mean actually? What kind of a conclusion should we have when we look into the matter? It can mean basically any kind of difference in power. It can be economic, social class, social standing, position. It can be of race. It can be ethnic relations in different countries. It can be gender issue, especially in the cultural setting where actual power
2 minutes, Tommy,
between women and men is really different. Okay, what did you say? 2 minutes. Whoa. Am I slow? I might be. And the biggest question is when power imbalance becomes exploitation. And I would like to say that these three items over there are the things that we should take a look into. There was no way out, or there's no realistic way to withdraw consent in the situation. So there is not a ground for fair agreement anymore. Or the situation is so dire that somebody is demanding sex from a person that actually is in a situation they need to survive instead of negotiate what I want to do. And exploiting this kind of situation would be considered, well, exploitation. Or the system is very unfair structurally. The conditions are very bad, or the terms of the agreement are already skewed. I have a couple of examples, but I just skip them, sorry. To conclude, the key ethical factors in this matter would be the ability to consent, to freely negotiate of your situation, and some degree of control over your choices and conditions. I'm not saying full degree of, or full control, because no one has that. And if you need to work in a factory to make money, you don't have full control. Nobody has that. And I need to say that most of the problems concerning sex work are not problems of sex work, but they are problems of poverty, inequality, and lack of support for the sex workers or for other people. So you end up in a dire situation because of other social problems. They are not problems of sex work, and thus you shouldn't say that sex work should be abolished or restricted because of these reasons. They don't warrant that, but they warrant help and support and active measures to make sex workers' lives better. So this is a different argument. You should be very careful what you can say when actually an argument warrants the abolitionist perspective, or when it warrants some social activism to improve the situation. So to skip some things, my conclusion in this matter is that sexual autonomy of sex workers and clients may not be disregarded for any moralist or practical concerns coming from a conservative thinking, sex negativity, religious norms and such, also in radical feminism. And it is ethically permissible to sell and buy sexual services, so we should treat people who do that with the same respect we treat anyone else. All right, here we go. This is the statement to end this presentation. Thank you for listening.